Oh my God, yes, that's right. Hello, everybody. Hi, my name is Jefferson Coimbra. Yes, half Portuguese, Italian, British, Brazilian. But this is going to be a lesson. Actually, it's not going to be a lesson, it's going to be a webinario, a new format of how we teach and how we learn and how we share and how we exchange things. It's part of the subject of educação, criação musical, musical education, or musical creation, actually speaking, by Professor Mariana Galon da Silva, here in Brazil, in Claretiano, which is a university center here. And that's the graduate school. It's a graduate school in which they offer this lato sensu post graduation course. And one of the disciplines, one of the subjects, is this one, in which I have to talk about one of the most important guys. Well, I'm going to be talking about John Paynter, because John Paynter is an Englishman and he's a very well known personality in England. He's responsible for music in schools today, given his importance in the subject. And why did that all happen? Well, three things which are very important for John Paynter is freedom, discovery, and individuality. He thinks that these three things, they are the grounding for musical education to take place. In his three books, the first one was Sound and Silence in 1970. The other one was, just a second, let me remember, Hear and Sound, which I read a few parts of it, and also Sound and Instructor for 1992, if I'm not mistaken. The previous one is 1972, I guess, yes. 1974 probably, but anyway, well, just recall that in John Paynter's education there is no method, there is no methodology to follow, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, he establishes that we should have projects rather than follow a straight sequence, because we are individuals. Remember, individuality in the principles, in the foundations. So, and by this, there is a great relevance, the word creativity, and to be creative, and this will, as we would say, and not method, that he has. He proposes that we should compose music together, and by composing we would be inventing and creating, of course, and also the second part would be the execution, which would be the performance itself. So work on how we expose what we previously had created, and also attentive listening, if we can say this in English. I can't really recall, or listening is key for Paynter. We should, by listening, be able to rethink concepts and be able to maybe interact with these other reflections and provide some food for thought. This stream of thought comes, all together with some very important other composers, pedagogues, musicians, performers, studiers, academics from all over the world. We could say, for example, that Dalcroze, that Kodali, Schaffer, Williams, even Villa-Lobos or Arf in Germany, and with others, very important figures like Suzuki in Japan. We would call them the mainly musical educators from the first and second generation in the 20th century. And these guys, they were worried about lots of things in common. John Paynter in England, he was worried about how we should spread music, So by composing, which was developing technique, would be the principle for him, So creativity and composing musically would be something that we should technically develop. I mean, it was not that technique or technical view was not important. It was, but behind that, we should construct and found a way for the development of the human being who was executing the musical instrument, you know. So also when we talk about all this part, we have to remember that John Paynter was not, unfortunately, able to come to Brazil. But we have a representative, Teresa Mateiro. She exchanged letters while she was composing her book. And in her book, she was talking it's called Pedagogias em Educação Musical by IBPEX for 2012. And she talks about this with him before he died. He read the book according to what she says, and he was in agreement with what she was developing here in Brazil. But you know, as we can see, he was from England, a little island here in the middle of nowhere, and then he was able to travel the world, and people was really interested in this foundation for the individual person, you know, and this creative listening that was part of his view of teaching music and learning music, or even acquiring music, we could even risk to say. In Bequadro in Italy, he was also invited to write, also in the British Journal of Musical Education. I guess that John Paynter and his experiments are very much what Villa-Lobos did here in Brazil, you know. Villa-Lobos got the modinhas, the popular music, and made people sing. In 1935, for example, Villa-Lobos got Nhapopé, or even Cobra Grande, these very popular myths or legends of the Amazon, popular tales, and made people sing, solo or in choir. Orff did something very similar in Germany. Suzuki did the same thing in Japan, but not at that same level, let's say, in terms of singing together. But what John Paynter was really aiming was at being able to develop a person who was absolutely able to cope with this generosity of the 20th century. You know, so now I guess that we, in the beginning of the 21st century, as musical learners, educators, or educators who are learners necessarily, in my opinion, we should be revisiting these thoughts, not only the educational idea that we have back there in Paideia, in which we first need to compound the man, develop his character, his morale, his soul, his spirit, and his ethics, and then music will be part of that foundation.